From the land down under, with the rock at its centre, comes the little Aussie Watchman.
The little Aussie Watchman is back. Given that I'd run out of inspirational material, I have not been commenting on issues for a while, but the Syrian crisis has brought my blood to boiling point and has called me back. The so-called chemical weapons attack in Douma, Syria, which led to American, France and British bombardment of Syria, is so clearly a false flag that I have barely words to express my disgust and outrage at the Western response. The first issue is one of motive. President Assad of Syria had no motive whatsoever to use chemical weapons. He was and continues to be winning the war in Syria. Douma was in an area that had been the subject of a 6-week campaign against the foreign-backed rebels. The Syrian government was winning this campaign, and many militants had already been allowed to leave the area. It was only a matter of days before the whole area was to come under Syrian control. Why in the world would Assad authorise the use of chemical weapons? It just doesn't make sense. However, the Western-backed rebels would benefit quite a lot from Western intervention and a false flag attack. The second issue is the lack of substantial evidence. All evidence has been gleaned from social media video from foreign-backed opposition groups. Syria immediately asked the UN to send chemical weapon investigators to the area to test for chemical weapons. The Organisation for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons agreed, and investigators were immediately given visas. The day before they were due to visit the area in Douma, the West decided to drop the precision weapons to wipe out Syrian infrastructure. The West were clearly afraid that the investigators would not find any evidence of chemical weapons being used. And you can be sure that the investigators will not find any evidence to incriminate the Syrian government, just as happened many times in the past. And also, the investigators' conclusions will not find its way onto Western mainstream media. Of this, you can be doubly sure. The third issue is the patently false pretense of bombing so-called chemical weapons testing sites. One such site was the Berzeh Scientific Research Center, which is in the center of heavily populated Damascus. According to those who work there, it mainly does research on chemotherapeutic agents, while according to the West, it is a chemical weapons laboratory. So why in the world would the West risk contaminating an urban populated area with chemical weapons by bombing a chemical weapon laboratory? And why in the world would the workers at the plant go back to the bombed laboratory without protective equipment if they knew there was chemical weapons there? This is a complete fabrication by the West, and they know it. The fourth issue is the testimony of witnesses and doctors from Douma. Doctors who treated the children claim they were being treated for inhalation injury and hypoxia due to the dust and smoke from the use of regular weapons. There was no evidence of chemical weapons, or specifically in this case, chlorine gas being used. A white helmet foreigner walked into the hospital and yelled, "Chemical weapons attack," which set off a panic with families hosing down their children. But it was all a scam. There was no chemical weapon attack, according to the doctors. Russia goes even further, saying that they have irrefutable evidence that the white helmets were being told what to do by British Secret Service. The source of this information is unknown at this time. The fifth issue is that the rebels have been caught multiple times using chemical weapons and trying to blame the Syrian government for it. The UN itself has proven and documented this. The sixth issue is the precedent from last year where America bombed an airstrip following a supposed chemical weapons attack. There was minimal evidence then, despite America's assertions of conclusive evidence. Only last week, there was a striking statement by the Secretary of Defense, James Mattis, that the US had no evidence that the Syrian government used the banned nerve agent sarin against its own people. In conclusion, the West have once again used their weapons of mass deception to strive forward in geopolitical and financial goals based on a barrage of false accusations and propaganda. The message is clear. We are willing to use any means at our disposal to get our own way. The Syrian people are merely pawns in a geopolitical cloak and dagger game, which will one day affect those who lie to create war. Justice will catch up with the West one day. For what one sows, what will reap. What a nation sows, that is what that nation will reap.